What is up, everybody? My name is Nate. Welcome to another video. To the left of me is Boney Stark. He's shy. And today we're going to be painting a Death Guard bloat drone, so let's get into it.
Alright, you filthy heretics. The first thing we're going to be putting on this flying septic tank is some heavy metal by Warpainter. Now we're going to be hitting the propulsion units, the top fin, and the hoses dangling out of its nasty meat tubes and arms, and of course the flesh mower itself with this paint, applying it with an airbrush as you can see here. Now, I'm not trying to, have any sort of control in this. Obviously, I would like it to stay on the propulsion systems themselves, but I'm also not worried if they get onto the actual body or the front shell. At the end of the day, it's all, any paint that gets on there is going to look a little bit more grimy, which is exactly what we want. Keep in mind, though, we are going to be weathering all of this later, so don't worry if it comes out too shiny or anything like that. So let's talk about what exactly is a Foetid Bloat drone. Well, essentially, imagine if a lawnmower and some demonic air fryer had a baby, and then Nurgle came along and said, "You know what this needs? A big old whiff of existential dread." There you go. That's a bloat drone. But lore-wise, these things are demon engines. They float around on corrupted warp tech, spewing disease, belching filth, and dicing anything that gets too close with those flesh mowers. This is essentially just the flying version of Nurgle's Roomba, gliding across the battlefield, cleaning up the living one corpse at a time. And when they're not chopping things into stew, they're vomiting plague spew or melting armor with entropy cannons. So, they're lovely dinner guests. Now, if we're talking mechanically in game, they're fast, tough, and an absolute nightmare for infantry, depending on what the attachment is you have up front. I have that attachment, which is obviously the flesh mower. They come with a few different ones you can select. Now, you can slap a couple of these on your Death Guard army, and essentially you just got a big, mobile, fast, very adaptable unit that loves spreading disease like your grandma's potato salad at a summer barbecue. The only difference is this one has slightly more projectile vomiting. Reeling it back a little bit, I'm just trying to finish up these arms here, but not trying to get the gray, or I'm sorry, heavy metal paint on the tops of the arm armor here. As you can see, that will be painted green after this. So just trying to work our way around, make sure we get all those little tubes on the inside of the organ hoses. And then once we are done with that, we're going to be moving on to a green color, which is one of my favorites from the John Blanche set. Give a couple of these little vents up here a quick spray, do the same thing on the other side, and then we will be done with heavy metal. This is a little bit what it looks like once you're done with it. Like I said, we will be weathering it, so don't worry. That shine is going to come off pretty soon. Up next is going to be Tainted Garden from Warpainter's John Blanche set. Now, this is a dark olive green color that we're going to be applying to the armor plating that covers the arms and the dome piece up top. The dome piece that's keeping, whatever's piloting this walking infection from getting absolutely brained by a crack missile. Assuming there's anything in there besides pus, spite, and bad intentions in the first place, but you get the point. Now, I prefer using Tainted Garden over regular Death Guard green just because since it is darker, it already looks a lot better whenever you weather it. The regular Death Guard green, it comes off a little bit too bright for me. I feel like you kind of really have to, put some Agrax Earth Shade or something like that on top of it for it to really look good. This, on the other hand, it looks great straight out the pot. You don't really have to add anything to it. And if you do, it just looks even better. So, highly recommend it. Highly recommend checking out that entire set in the first place. So as you can see here, I'm not really being too careful when I'm applying it, just making sure it gets down into those recessed crack areas and just getting a good thin layer on the top of it. No need in going in for a second layer. It looks great with just one thin coat. You see it blends really well with the heavy metal. It's a really great contrast together. Finally, moving on to the top dome armor piece area, we're just going to be lightly brushing a coat onto these areas, making sure that we get into the little cracked areas on the sides. You can't really see it here, but it's one of those little kind of hard to, or easy to miss areas, I should say. Now, like I said, just one thin coat so that the some of the overspray from the heavy metal kind of bleeds through it a little bit, giving it a little bit more of a weathered effect that we're looking for here. When I first picked up Death Guard, I thought, this is going to be easy. Just slap some green on it, throw on some rust, maybe a little bit of blood for flavor, and then we're done. I was wrong. I was very wrong. These things are loaded with detail. Like every square inch is dripping with like some pipes, some boils, teeth, cable, horns, some weird tumor. I don't know, you name it. You can spend 10 minutes just trying to figure out which part's flesh and which part's armor, and sometimes the answer is both. But honestly, that's kind of what makes painting Death Guard so fun. There's no really right way to do it. There's a lot of different color schemes. You can either go super grimdark and, make it look like a walking biohazard, or you can lean into the regular box art, which I think looks a little cartoony. That's why I don't usually do it, not gonna lie. But hey, if that's your thing, that's your thing. I'm teaching you how to do it my way. So I've seen people do a lot of like, the palette hand armor, kind of like in my last video. That's what I did with the Lord of Poxes. So you can kind of go any way you want to with these guys. There's no wrong way to do it. Any mishap that you have is just like oh yeah, that's supposed to be there. And no one's going to tell you otherwise because there's so much going on here that, what are they going to say? Yeah, that eyeball is supposed to be a boil. Honestly, I had no idea that it was an eyeball. But hey, here we are. It's on brand. It works out. Up next, we're getting fleshy with it. We're going to be using Rakarth Flesh, that deliciously pale corpse kiss tone, and brushing it right onto all that exposed skin and nasty organ tubes hanging off the back. Rakarth's a solid base for diseased skin. It's got that sickly, I haven't seen sunlight in 10 years and I'm made of cold ham kind of vibe. It's perfect for Nurgle skin or any other grimdark, nasty skin that you're going to end up painting red and sickly later. Now, I should note that every paint that I use a brush to put on is being put on a wet palette first. If you don't have a wet palette, highly recommend getting one. It keeps your paints wet for longer, but also kind of thins them down just a little bit, making it easier to spread around the mini, and it's not so clumped up. Because speaking of like the Tainted Garden, I don't know what it is about that specific paint, but it always comes out of the tube just really thick. Like no matter how much I shake it, I even have a vortex mixer, and I'll put it on there for like 30 seconds, and it'll still come out really thick. I don't know what it is about that paint, but put it on a wet palette, move it around a little bit, get it nice and thin, and then apply it to the mini on the back, getting all up in these raised areas by the vents, and then going to do the same exact thing on the other side. After we're done painting the skin on the back, we're just going to slap it right on the face, what's left of it anyways, right around the lenses. It helps draw attention to the head later on whenever we start adding some nasty contrast and enamel paints. And by this point, the drone's looking pretty grotesque, but also still oddly lovable, kind of like a pug or Michael Cera. But we're going to change that with the next paint whenever we start working on these little ooh tentacles we got here going on in the front. That being said, we've got a little bit of Bugman's Glow. Going to be using that on the tentacles. I don't have a lot to say about this paint. I use it for pretty much any tentacle or, you know, gross little slime skin thing that we got going on in the mini. It's just it looks great for doing just that. Afterwards, usually you want to wash it with, some Berserker Bloodshade, which is what we're going to do later. Spoiler alert. And I think it gives a good tentacly look. You can even I don't do it on this mini, but you can even go over with like some gloss varnish on it to give it that, I'm still wet kind of vibe going on. I did that on my Rodigus. I sadly do not have a video of that, but if you're interested in seeing some pictures of it, you can follow me on my TikTok. It's the exact same as my YouTube handle, and you can see what I'm talking about there. So this mini only has these two tentacles, and he's got one on the back that I actually missed until way later, and I had to go back and paint it. Didn't even realize it was another tentacle. All these models are really busy. They got a lot going on. You can't like that. Like I thought that was like a hook or something, but nope, it's a tentacle. So here we go, going back over it. Up next, we're going to be using a little bit of Emperor's Gold because even in Death and Decay, my Plague Boy's got to stay drippy. Now, we're going to be brushing this onto this fluid tank on the back. It's carrying a bunch of Nurgle's juice or Plague Punch, whatever you want to call it. This is where the bloat drone gets its premium 92 grade gonoherpesifilades juice that it sprays on your frontline infantry. May the Emperor protect their souls, but not when they're fighting me. Up next, we're going to be hitting these metal bands that are holding the slab of back meat in place. It's these little details that count. Really helps sell the idea that the machine is, restraining whatever this nightmarish, cold processed turkey sandwich looking thing is, keeping it in its little shoe of armor that it's got going up front. Really makes a difference in adding these little things. My headcanon is that if those restraints weren't there and this thing was to fall out of its shell, it's going to look like that piece of gum on Sausage Party. Moving on to little miscellaneous areas on the arms, just kind of these tiny bolts and joints, around the mower and the little exhaust pipes there. It's the little accents that count. It looks like it's not really doing much, but at the end of the day, whenever we're looking at the model, it really does make a big difference. It all just kind of pops together. Now, what you can do is once you're done painting on the gold, you can go over it with some Agrax or shade just to give it a little bit more depth and weathering. I don't do it because I like having the gold. It kind of helps me give Trinidad James space aids and a run for his money at the same time, so I'm all about it. On a more serious note, though, all we're really doing here is we're just looking for little accent areas that we can easily paint over the heavy metal with. Just any kind of joint or bolt, like what I'm doing right here, is I'm just taking a little bit of paint and just lightly dabbing it on there. You can't even barely see it on the video, but I swear if you were to look at it up close, it makes a massive difference. So just getting every little bolt and joint, and then we're also going to get the little this stem or injection needle thingy on the front too. Getting these little rebreather vents here before moving on to said injection needle. And then once we're done with that, we get to move on to me backtracking to heavy metal and getting the outside of these lenses. I forgot to do that earlier, so bear with me. Up next, we're going to be using a little bit of the ivory white from Warpaint's John Blanche set, and all we're going to be applying with that is the teeth and the horns up top. You can see I already went ahead and did the horns just to kind of bring the color back out. They were all Wraithbone. That's what I primed the mini in. This is essentially Wraithbone. It's just a little bit lighter, so it really helps these little things stand out. Once we're done with that, this is kind of what we're looking like so far.
Next off, we're going to be using a little bit of Vallejo's Light Flesh. We're going to be dry brushing this onto the back parts where we had just applied the rack hearth. For those of you who may not know what dry brushing is, all you're going to do is apply a little bit of paint to the end of a dry brush here, and then you're going to wipe all of it off onto a nice paper towel or something like that, leaving barely any paint on the end of the brush. And the reason we do this is because whenever we go to apply it to the back parts of the Mini, we're only going to be focusing on these raised edges here. It's a very subtle technique. You can barely see it coming through here, but I promise what it does is it gives you a more of a three-dimensional shape, kind of giving it an overall highlight. Now, I hate edge highlighting, but this is an exception to that. It's very quick, very easy, and whenever you're out of paint, or it feels like nothing else is going on to the raised edges, just apply more paint, dry it off, repeat the process. And all we're really focusing on here is getting these raised areas. You can kind of see it a little bit better once I get to the little sticky parts on the back golden tube there. But that's pretty much all you're doing, just making sure that it only touches these raised highlighted areas. We're also going to be applying the same light flesh to the rest of the tubes as well. Once we're done dry brushing, we're going to airbrush some Berserker Bloodshade. Now what we're going to be doing is focusing more heavier onto the sides and like the deep folded areas, anywhere where the flesh would stay damp, dark. And then we're going to feather it out lighter towards the middle so that we get that rich bruised gradient. And this is really where the flesh really just starts to come to life. It adds depth, builds character, and most importantly, it adds a more realistic view of a bruised, sickly, bloated skin look. Like I said, we're staying a little bit darker here on the raised edges. Apologize for the camera angle, working on that still. I know all you really see right now is my airbrush, but we will get there, I promise. Doing the same thing to the other side, remembering to stay darker towards the outer edges, and then working our way, giving it a lighter shade towards the middle area. Don't forget to get those little flesh tubes down at the bottom. And then working our way with a second coat, just slightly darker, trying to get it in just the side edges. You're going to want to do that all the way around the top. And once you're done, it should look something a little bit like this. Using the same Berserker Bloodshade now, just this time with an actual paintbrush. And we're just going to gloss over these tentacles here in the front and the one in the back. And once we're done with that, we're also going to apply it to the inner face area, being protected by this nice crab shell it's got going on. After we're done making bruises, we're going to make boils. And with that, we're going to be using Nasdrag Yellow. This is a contrast paint. So all you really got to do is take it, apply it to the tops of the boils. It's going to dry lighter on the top and then darker in the raised or recessed areas, I should say. And then after we're done doing that, we're going to go touch all these boils around his entire body. Now, this may seem like a small step, but trust me, like once you've got the armor and the flesh looking good, these boils are what really push it to the full on, like, I am diseased level. So no thinning required here. We're just doing it straight out the pot, and then we're just literally just going to go around and just poke every single little boil. Finally, time for my favorite part of the painting process, and that is weathering. We're going to be using Goon's Grime by Villainy Ink to make this nice white shell dirty and grimy. Now, if you're new to enamel paints, they're a little bit different than regular acrylics. These don't necessarily dry into the surface the same way. They kind of more so sit on top, meaning you get to manipulate it after it's dry. So we're just going to slap it on, let it dry, and then when it's done drying, we're going to go through a whole removal process. Now, as far as the removal process and for the thinning of these paints, they're a little bit different. You can't just use water. You need to have some sort of white spirits. I get the white spirits from AK Interactive, and I haven't really tried any of the other ones, so I'm not exactly sure if they work the exact same or not. That's just the one that I use. So we're just going to make sure that we get this lathered up on pretty much every area that you see that's white, just to kind of dirty it up. We're going to be applying this to this outer shell, the teeth, the horns. And then whenever you're done applying it, you can either let it dry. However, these do take a little bit longer to dry than your standard acrylic paints. Usually about 20 minutes is what I've kind of tested. But I don't sit there and let it dry. I have absolutely zero patience. So I just get a hair dryer and that's what I use. And all that takes is about 15 seconds. So you'll see me do that here in just a second. Now this is just low heat, pretty much right up to the mini for about 15 seconds. It'll dry. And then once we're done with that, we can move on to the removal process. Speaking of the removal process, all you really need for this is a Q-tip or a makeup sponge. I use both of them in this video, so you'll see what I'm talking about for both. And all you're really going to want to do for this is just dab it into your white spirits, not heavy though, just a little bit. And then you're just going to work your way around all the edges that you don't want to be covered with the enamel paint. So doing it right here on the horns, I'm just trying to focus on the top of the horns, so that way it kind of has a nice contrast or blend, starting darker from the bottom and then lighter on the top. Is kind of where my mindset was on this. And you're just going to go all the way around, just doing a light tapping motions. You don't want to be too rough with it because it can strip some of the paint underneath if it's not dry enough. So just very lightly. Moving on now to my makeup sponge. I got a pack of 200 of these on Amazon for like $10, so really easy to get your hands on. Same exact thing, just dip it in the white spirits and then just kind of do a little dabbing motion on all the darker areas, bringing out the light underneath. Now, I will say that while I was in the middle of doing this entire, painting process, I highly recommend just using these over a Q-tip. You can use a Q-tip if you're trying to get into like a really hard to reach area, but these just make it so much easier. So not really streaking it, just doing light little circles all over the place. What we're doing is we're just gently rubbing away the top layer of grime. What stays behind is this really nice contrast of dirt and pooled rot in the crevices, while the raised bone and horn get brought back to life. It's like revealing ancient filth trapped under centuries of neglect. And that's kind of just the magic of enamel paints. You get all the detail enhancing dirt without losing the sharpness of your base paint job. It's controlled filth, if you may. Now, after I had done the entire removal process, I thought that maybe the edges should probably be a little bit darker. So I'm just taking the same Goon's Grime and just working my way all around the edges. Next up for the weathering process, we're going to be using Villainy Inks Sector Rust, and we're going to be lathering that on every single spot that we hit earlier with the heavy metal base coat. No thinning and no cleanup. We want this metal to look like it's been left in a swamp under a corpse during a warp storm. That being said, we're just applying it super heavy, straight out of the pot. We're getting texture, depth, and even little clots of grime when it pulls up. And that's all part of it. No clean edges. Clean edges are for towel players. And for all intents and purposes, that was a joke. Or was it? I don't know. I'll let the towel players decide. Moving on from that, we're going to be doing the exact same thing that we did to the propulsion systems, to the arms and the flesh mower and the little apparatus, breathing apparatus thing that he's got going on in his face. And we're just applying it really heavy, straight out of the pot, all over every single shiny area. We want no more shiny areas on this mini. He's supposed to be gross and disgusting, and that is exactly what we are doing. I would also like to add that enamel paints and the white spirits are very harsh on your brushes. Do not use your actual real hair brushes using enamel paints. They're just going to ruin them faster. So I have a set of like 3 synthetic brushes that I use solely for using enamel paints. This one's name is Ferris and Horde, and he's doing a great job. So once we're done applying all that, this is what we're looking like. Nice and rusty and corroded. Finishing up the back fleshy areas, we're going to be using Carrion Crimson by Villainy Ink, and we're going to be targeting the deeper spots, those sunken little areas that we hit really heavy with the Berserker Blood Shade earlier, and we're just going to be controlling the enamel paint and moving it around those areas. Now, this isn't more so about coverage. This is more so of just tying all of the disgusting fleshy parts together. It's about depth. Think like bruising, clotted blood, necrosis, all happy thoughts. Now, off camera, I do also hit the little flesh tubes on the bottom. I just couldn't get a really good camera angle when I was painting it, but you get the point, and you'll see the end result here shortly. So just making sure that we're staying in all really like just all the places where we were talking about going heavier earlier, getting into those little cracks on the skin parts sticking to the golden canister on his back, and just doing little blots and dabs all over the place just to give it a little bit more detail. Like right here, I'm not really thinking. I'm just splatting. And after that, we're going to go and put it in the little creviced areas on the front of his face. And this is what it'll all look like. Next up, we're applying some Athonian Camo Shade to all the spots where we hit the Tainted Garden earlier. So really just the arms and that top little helmet that he's got going on there. Just making sure this gets all into like the little cracked areas of his arms and the side edges of the helmet. Now it's finally time for Goop Hour, and for that we're bringing out Nurgle's Rot, and we're going to slap it all over this bloated beauty like it's leaking infectious snot. For this, we're going to be applying this to his horns, and then we're going to be applying it to the base around him. Now for the base, I really have no exact rhyme or reason as to where I'm putting this. I'm kind of just lathering it all over the place, but not too much. I still want, the rest of the base to give it have its own shine as well, but we're just kind of making it look like the battlefield everywhere that this mini goes is just filled with rot. So putting it around those little skulls there, and then we're going to be pulling it into the area where the model is actually standing up right here, and then we're going to put a lot of it on there and then streak it back, making it look like everywhere he goes, this just follows him. In hindsight, if anybody knows where I can get a really small wet floor sign to stick right next to it, that'd be much appreciated because that sounds really funny. Next up are his eye lenses, and for that we're going to be using ProAcryl's Fluorescent Red. Now for this, all I'm doing is making sure that I have a white undertone, so that way the fluorescent side of the paint actually pops, and all we're going to be doing is applying this to both eyes.
You can't just be using that fluorescent red and calling it a day on those eyes, you lazy bum. Put a bit more effort in, will you?
Nobody asked you.
But as much as I hate to admit it, Boney was right. So we're going to be using Villainy Inks Ichor of the Damned to do a little outer layer of those eyes. Now, Ichor of the Damned is a black glossy ink from Villainy Inks, and all we're going to be doing is using it to make a layer of grime and soot around those eyes. And we're being real deliberate with this, just working it around the outer rims of the lenses, leaving that fluorescent red nice and untouched in the center. This is kind of creating a little halo of darkness around the glow. And that is exactly what we're going for here, but that's the best you're getting out of me for this video because I suck with lenses and they scare me. So here we are. But I am happy that I did it because that black outline does make the inner lenses glow, just give a little bit more of a punch. Next up, we're going to be giving the Flesh Mower a Stringy Gore effect, and with that, we're going to be using Uhu glue. Now, I would like to point out that you do not want to use this solvent-free Uhu glue. It took me forever to find an answer to this, and I had tried using that solvent-free stuff for like so many of my minis and got really frustrated with it, not realizing that there was a difference. So apparently, if you get the stuff that's solvent-free, it does not string out like it is in the video right now. It just gloops together and it'll string out, but then it'll come right back together and not give you the desired effect. So if you're interested in doing something like this, please make sure that you get the one that has the solvent in it. I got mine on Amazon. However, I will say that it did not specify that it had the solvent in it or not. So I guess you just kind of got to get lucky. But you can see how it works here. You're just taking a toothpick, getting some glue on it, and just stringing it along the mini. Once it's done, it'll look a little bit like this. After that, we're going to be using Citadel's Blood for the Blood God, and we're just going to take it straight out of the pot and lather it all over where we just put the Uhu glue. Now, I will say the Uhu glue, it took about 30 minutes for it to dry fully, so I highly recommend waiting for that before adding this. And once you're done applying that, then you're done. This is the final effect and the last part of painting this Foetid Bloat drone. And there you have it, everybody. The Foetid Bloat drone in all its rotted, rusted, bile-dripping glory. If this thing doesn't look like it came out of Papa Nurgle's armpit, then I don't know what does. If you liked watching this flying dumpster fire come to life, make sure to smash that like button harder than this thing grinds up guardsmen into soup. Drop a comment below and let me know what you guys want to see next. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, because we got plenty more filth, minis, and nonsense on the way. If you want to support the channel, consider throwing a coin to the local plague priest. Or just share the video. That helps too. But anyways, thanks for watching. Now go forth, paint something nasty, and may your wash never pull where it shouldn't. Peace.